Hey guys, I've finally kind of had it with postponing this project. It's been a long time coming, and it's one of those things where like the more I've thought about it, the more complicated I've made it in my head, and the more I realize that there's no easy way to explain all this. So this is going to be half an hour long. It's going to be a couple of different display kills, and it will be me voiceovering, explaining what's going on and why. Very similar to how I did the other guides, with the exception that this is not live action. These are pre-recorded kills that I've selected because they display different aspects of this fight that matter and different strategies that can be applied. So the first thing you're looking at is a technical breakdown of what the fuck happens in a Solak kill. Solak is divided into 4 phases. Each phase can be handled differently depending on team constellation, depending on DPS capabilities of the group, depending on personal preference. Honestly, there's much more casual ways to do this than some of these examples, and there are some details and stuff that you can tweak pretty much endlessly to make this fight more optimized. But the first 2 phases are probably the most complicated, so those are going to take a little bit longer to explain. The first phase, all of these phases have HP caps. That's kind of important to bring to the table here, because most of the strategies are relying on how quickly you can reach said HP caps, and at which point in your ability rotations you are going to be at the end of those. I won't be going through ability rotations in detail because they change so much from team to team. A trio with 2 people can be completely different from a trio with 2 other people. And it would take me forever to go through everything, but I am going to go through some bullet points and some basic ideas of what's going on and why. First thing that's going to happen when you come into a kill is you start the fight, you do an ultimate or a DPS rotation, and you just deal as much damage as you can for around, I think, 15 or 16 seconds, give or take. Then after that, there will be a special attack called green pads or pads. Solak is going to spawn a couple of green glowing blinking squares that are falling down from the sky, and these will be randomized all across the map. There will be 1 square per player, but they are not specified. Each player needs to reach one of these squares and stand on it as the bomb falling out of the sky lands. That bomb will then attach to the player and it will explode after a couple of seconds. If people fail the pads, if they miss one, or if one person ignores one for some reason, or if 2 people go to the same one, then the pad that was not collected is going to explode into blight damage. It will deal somewhere in the neighborhood of like 5 or 6k damage. It's quite a big hit, so if you miss 2 of them, that has a high knockout potential. One trick to get around this and to sort of save up is to use a power burst of vitality to double your HP for the impact timer in case somebody screws this up. This is mostly not a problem in smaller teams. Duo or trio, you can quite easily orchestrate who goes in which direction, or who takes the one closest to the boss, or whatever however you want to plan that out. And when it comes to 4-man and bigger, then pads are a little bit more messy and they can screw up quite often. After the pads, there's another short window where you deal damage to Solak for another somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 seconds. So you go back onto the boss and you carry on DPSing as much as you can. After which he will spawn a circle of roots around the arena. Each of these roots have varying HP depending on the team size. It scales with the group size. So normally, if it was, say, a duo kill, you would just separate the arena in 2. One person would take the eastern half and one person would take the western half. Kill all these roots and then go back onto Solak. After this happens, after you've done with that, or at around 106, 105, somewhere just north of a minute, there will be the next special attack. This is the root special. This is one of those things that can go horribly wrong, but isn't that extremely complicated. Say it was a duo spawn, then each player would get a timer visible on the screen. It's a little overlay box that shows a timer counting down from either like 10 or like 15, which is randomized. It will also show a blinking arrow or an indicator to a specific spot on the map at which or from which a series of routes are going to spawn. There's 3 lines of routes coming from the direction of that arrow. So by the time the timer reaches 0, you want to go over there and plant said routes and then just free them and run away from them, because they will stun you so you can't run. If you screw this up and you stand in your own routes, you're going to be taking a bunch of blight damage. Blight damage is bad. You don't want to take that. And then when those are done, you go back onto Solak and you carry on DPSing. After a little while, there will be 2 blight bombs. The blight bombs are assigned to pretty much any player except the base tank or whoever holds aggro of Solak. Blight bombs will give a little meter similar to the one at AOD or any other explosion mechanic, really, where the player has to run away from the base tank to tank 1 or 2 hits, depending on how fast the kill goes in DPS terms. These hits are AoE, so that player needs to run away from the base tank and from any other players, and they can be mitigated by Resonance or Disruption Shield. After this happens, Solak is gonna crumble down in the center of the arena, and you will be able to attack his arms first and then his legs. And after the legs are killed, he will spawn a Blight Core. The Blight Core has a separate life points bar, and that needs to be dealt to 0 to progress to phase 2. If you fail the arms and legs, they will explode, deal blight damage, and spawn something called a Blightbound Lasher. This is also the monster that spawns if you fail the routes around the arena. They are incredibly annoying, and that should just never happen, so focus as much as you can to deal with this properly, but save your Berserk for the core. That's very vital. The core can be done different ways. Most popular is what's called a 1-cycle core, or 1cc. That's what I've marked out on the screen here. The reason I put that line there is because the phase ends after the core is dead, so if you succeed with a 1-cycle core, you'll progress to phase 2. If you don't, Solak will do a number of auto attacks and he will go back into arms and legs and repeat the whole process until the core is dead. For phase 2, there's going to be 2 things that come into play initially. The first one is the elf called Merethiel, who is standing at the entrance of the arena. The second one is a bunch of eruptions that spawn in 4 corners of the arena. What you want to do here is you need to, first of all, get rid of all your blight stacks. Blight stacks are stacks that occur when you take blight damage from anything. In this case, there will be a blight storm in the center of the arena up top in the sky that's gonna like drop sort of purple rain on you. So clicking that elf will spawn a green circle. People need to go into that circle and cleanse, and then they need to finish one of the eruptions, stand in a blue circle that spawns around the eruption area, and they will be shot up into the sky near the blight storm, where you just spam click the blight storm to deal typeless damage to it. No abilities. Once you come down, it's sort of up to the team how to deal with the rest of the eruptions. Normally everyone goes up on the first one. Then depending on team size and team experience, different amount of people go up on the second one or the third or fourth one, sort of depending on how that goes. There will be a couple of different examples showing how this can be dealt with in the following kills. After the Blightstorm and eruptions are done, there will be a phase that consists of one part getting rammed and 2 part ramming back, pretty much. You need to deal as much damage as you can to Solak for around a minute straight, thereabouts, during which there will be flying bombs that spawn randomly all around the arena that deal really nasty typeless damage to you, that also accelerates as the kill progresses. So the first bomb doesn't deal that much, and the last one deals almost your entire life bar. When these bombs are done, there will be a yellow glowing kind of orb that spawns behind Solak called Nature's Blessing. Nature's Blessing needs to be picked up by clicking it. Then there will spawn a little icon on the screen that is turquoise, green, bluish in color. It's 2 squares in a circle in the center, and when you click that, it will spawn a protective dome around you that mitigates most of the damage that comes in or I think it's about half of it, or thereabouts. It doesn't matter, but you want to stand under that dome anyway, is the point. During which you can, if you want to, you can run out and grab a resonance. There will be 5 big purple bombs that come on you during the time of that dome, so you want to spawn the dome as it's about to start, and it's difficult to explain when exactly this is without showing it, and this is also something you'd kind of develop a sense for after a while. The blight bombs can be resonance, they can be mitigated by disruption shield, they can be reduced by abilities, they can technically be completely mitigated by a barricade, although I really don't recommend this. You don't want to be wasting all the adrenaline at a DPS crucial phase. Because the thing with phase 2 is that the longer it takes to reach the HP cap, the worse it gets, and it just accelerates into actual hell. You don't want to experience that. I will explain some of it, at least the pieces that are relevant-ish, whereas if you progress any further than that in phase 2 without facing over to phase 3, you might as well just die and restart the kill, because it's going to be AIDS. So, after the Blight Rain, which is the piece of this list that I'm on now, Solak is going to do a slam. He slams his arm into the ground. One player will be targeted for this. That player needs to freedom or have anticipated on beforehand. As soon as Solak slams his arm down, he will stop attacking you, and after 1 or 2 more attacks, if you want to push in some extra damage there, one player needs to climb his arm. During the climb, you don't really need to do anything. You can still use abilities to build adrenaline. If you are meleeing, you won't be dealing damage. If you are using magic or range, you will. Whether or not the base tank or the DPS do the climb, it doesn't really make a tremendous difference. It's one of those details that people optimize. If there's a hybrid DPS and a melee base camp or the other way around, then the hybrid is the one who tends to climb, so you can use magic abilities to carry on damaging Solak during. After the climb is done, the player is going to be thrown back down onto the ground, and Solak is going to do a massive melee attack that will be either the end of you or a full life bar backup if you resonance it. It can also be mitigated by devotion or disruption shield or any other damage reduction. You don't need to have any of these available technically. If you screw it up, you can just pray melee and kind of tank it if you're high enough life points, but it does hit quite hard, so don't wing it at 1500 HP. And after the climb is done, he can either face into phase 3 or he will spawn another one of those blight rains, and you will need to do another dome. The Nature's Blessing is going to be available during the climb, so somebody has to pick another one of those up just in case. At this point, calorie bombs come into play for duos. They can be used to push Solak faster into phase 3 by healing him 50k and then carrying on damaging that past the point of 1.25 million, whereas he will push on to phase 3 faster. After this, if you still haven't faced him, if you still haven't dealt enough damage, there will be a Storm special, which is just big death, really. He starts spinning around like a hurricane, he turns purple, and he deals a couple of consecutive blight hits that are progressively harder. So if you get to this point by screwing something up or by not having enough damage, just make sure to have Barricade with a turtling perk ready so you can barricade a couple seconds into this and ignore the damage coming out of the storm. And now for a briefer explanation of phases 3 and 4, because I am going to need to show these to be able to explain how they work. They're very, very dynamic and very much up to the team how to strategize them. So at the beginning of phase 3, Solak spawns a bunch of relics around the arena that are originally sort of light bluish. They look like rune carvings, kind of. And if the base tank stands near them, they will start glowing in a circular animation around them. This means that the relic is charging, and when the relic is fully charged after enough time on it, the relic will turn purple. When the relic turns purple, Solak stops for a minute, he drops a light bomb on the place where the relic is turning purple, and then the previous icon that was used to spawn the dome appears on each player's screen. You can click this to enter Solak's mind and fight the elf Erethdor. Erethdor has a separate life points bar, and phase 3 is over by the time either the elf is dead or by the time all these relics have turned purple. Now, honestly, pretty much every single time you are going to be doing this by killing the elf, because killing or turning all the relics takes just an absolute age, and Solak's HP is going to be capped well before you are halfway through it. There's no real point doing that. It can maybe be some, I don't know, rotation practice or something for a first couple of KC if you're really nervous about adding other elements to the fight. But yeah, everyone kills the elf. During this, Solak also has a stun attack. He also has a roots attack, which is only present in trio or larger team constellations. The stun attack gives a message on the screen, and Solak also stuns you. It gives a message on the screen when you stun him. Solak stuns you, and then you need to stun him back. If you stun him, it will read that the player who did has just done so, and nothing will happen. If you don't, there will be a blight bleed that spawns on everyone that will just progress until you basically die, so you need to stun him. There's no getting around that. The elf at the entrance is present for this. You can technically go cleanse blight stacks if you want to take less damage, but there's no real point to doing this. This phase is not that difficult, and you'll find after a couple of kills, when you get used to it, you won't be using a ton of food here. During that stun attack, if it's a trio or larger, then everyone except the person that Solak is aggroing, which is the base tank, are gonna get a blight bomb spawning over their head. The blight bomb happens in duo spawns as well. At that point, the DPS just runs away and reses it, but if it's a trio or larger, the DPS are gonna have to run away, res it, then freedom or anticipate on beforehand if they know it coming. And there will be a line of roots in between each player that got this attack. So depending on the size of the group, if it's a trio, then 2 people will get a straight line. If it's a 4-man, then there will be a triangular line across all 3 players. So you need to kind of mind your footing here so that line doesn't spawn across the base tank, because he will have a really bad day if that happens. And then by the time the elf is dead, Solak needs to be HP capped at this point. By the way, this is pretty important. HP cap is varying across team sizes. In duo it's 300k, in trio it's 400k, in 4-man it's 500k, and so on. By the time the elf is dead, Solak is going to progress on to phase 4, and phase 4, the way that most people do it, is pretty much just a DPS race. It's a short burst of really big damage. There are more complicated factors to phase 4 if it doesn't go well. That involves one player going into the realm or Solak's mind, and there will be a bunch of shadow guys in there. They need to be tagged and aggro the player rather than Solak, and then the player is clicking Solak to heal him. There is a symbiosis between 2 life point bars here, but vast majority of the time, and the thing that you really should aim for doing, it's really not that difficult if you have decent melee gear and know a basic berserk rotation, is to do the strategy called no realming, abbreviated as NR when people are advertising for teams. That way you don't have to deal with any of this, and nobody has to do the realm thing, which can be quite tricky and does take a while to learn. I'm not going to include that aspect in this video because it's not something that anyone should aim for learning. Not to begin with. This is supposed to be an overview, not a detailed step-by-step guide of every single thing. And what you see on the left here, the green text is describing when you can skip mechanics in P1. This is all reliant on how much damage you can deal in how short a time. So look at the green line, you'll see at which point in the kill progression or the phase progression that you need to have capped Solak's HP or maxed out all the damage that you can deal on P1 for him to progress onto the arms and legs and skipping the mechanics in between. So the basic one is called the bomb skip. You can skip 2 bombs or 1. When people are talking about bomb skip, they are talking about skipping both, not just one of them. That will be sometime in between the root special attack with the arrow indicator roots and the blight bombs that Solak needs to reach his HP cap, then he will progress directly onto arms and legs without doing the blight bombs, or the more advanced root skip that is featured in a 4-man kill later on in this video, where you tackle it slightly differently, and when the roots spawn around the arena, you ignore them, you carry on damaging Solak, and you beat him down to facing onto the arms and legs. Then 2 people are doing arms and legs and 2 people are running around the arena and cleaning up all the roots. The root skip is messy, it is difficult, it also puts a lot of pressure on you being able to sort of improvise reasonably well with damage, but it is a fun strategy, and it will also cut massive times off your kills if you're trying for a PR or a tag or something. I should probably say that it's also pretty much only really relevant when it comes up to the specialist level. This is not something that you need to concern yourself with if you're learning this for the first time, or if you're just trying to figure out how this boss works or want to get a Reaper kill or whatever. It's absolutely not necessary, it's more of an elite strategy. On phase 2 there are 2 different skips that are sort of common. The third one, I don't really want to refer to that as a skip because it technically isn't, it's just a matter of Blightstorm damage management. The common one is the Storm skip. That will be just really any successful P2 that's skipping the rotating shitfest special attack at the end of it. If you have reached the HP cap properly, yes you should. This is not crazy difficult, then you'll perform a Storm skip, so you want to deal with that. And the second one is absolutely gnarly, and it's not something I recommend people look into unless they are pretty much avid enough at this boss to not be watching this guide to begin with. It's called Tanking the Rain, where you ignore all the eruptions. Pretty much, well, you don't ignore them, you kill them. But you don't go up to kill the Blightstorm, you just kill the eruptions and you carry on straight onto Solak. And what happens then is that the Blightstorm remains for the remainder of the kill, and it will continue raining purple blight damage down onto you for the rest of the kill, so this puts a lot more pressure on your food management. And being that Ripper Demons are very much meta at this boss and should be used in every possible case, then food management is sort of rough, depending if you're one-styling or hybriding. Obviously you have different amounts of inventory spaces to waste on super Ceradomin brew flasks, but this is... I will show this at the end of this video, but this is not really something that anyone needs to worry about who's watching this video. Then for phase 3 you have various ways of dealing with the elf. There's the one cycle elf, which is popular in duo teams, and then in larger team constellations, trio and upwards, there will be 2 cycles of elf or more, kind of depending on how you choose to deal with it. This is normally just agreed upon by the players on beforehand who goes in on the first cycle, which will be when the first pad turns purple, and how much damage they're going to try to push depending on what they have available, if they're using one combat style or hybriding, or where they are in their ability rotation from phase 2. You'll see plenty of examples of how this can be dealt with in the following kills. So now starting with the actual kill overviews. I won't be going through details step by step and pausing these during. I'm just going to be showcasing them and pointing out some stuff along the way. These are 4 different kills with 4 different strategies. So this is the first DPS burst. We're about to go into green pads. As you can see, it's quite obvious which one is on either side, so we just blade a dive over there. Go back to Solak. And then by the time this meter is full, you Disruption Shield and you Resonance. The roots have spawned. You can see our Dominion mines explode at the west side or left side of the screen. Sorry, south side. And then by the time the CGS has run out, we're going to run for the roots and start killing them. Notice that my Dominion mines are about to come off cooldown. They can be used by just clicking next to one of these roots without attacking it, planting them on the ground, waiting for them to explode, and then target the root and start dealing whatever is left of it. Like I'm doing here. And now we get the arrow indicator. That was a lucky one. It was right next to me, so I didn't have to run all the way across the arena. But there you go with the anticipation. I run away from my spot, and I carry on dealing damage to Solak. At this point, we're just waiting for Solak to reach the HP cap so he faces into the arms and legs. That's a Blightbound Lasher that happens if you don't kill one of the roots. Solak is capped. My duo partner is resonancing his first Blight Bomb. There was no second one. Now we're just dealing damage to the arms and legs. I am using one of my mutated flurries to reset my Berserk cooldown, so I have it available for the core later on. Sometimes necessary, sometimes not, kind of depends on the pacing on P1. And as you can see now, we're both working our way towards having full adrenaline so that we're ready to Berserk when the Blight core spawns. So yeah, bleed and assault, do a hurricane, one basic or two, and then a full 4-hit flurry. You can flank the core as well, it's not really necessary, but you can. Now we're starting one of the anima eruptions, so the erupts. I'm clicking the elf to spawn the cleansing circle by the time the erupt dies. Stand in the green circle to get the cleanse, and then we surge back into the blue one to be shot up and deal with the anima storm or the blight storm. After we're done with this, my partner is going to go onto one of the eruptions and I'm going to go kill the other two. This is just how we decided to deal with the eruptions. We could both go up on the second one and save ourselves a little bit of damage on the rest of this phase, but we chose not to do that here because we've both done this a couple of times. So you can see my partner going up again now, and me finishing the other two eruptions without using the blue circles to go up. Now the DPS race begins. Our goal now is pretty much to deal with the following mechanics, staying alive and dealing as much damage to Solak as we can, so we cap phase 2 at a convenient point before the gnarly stuff starts to happen. These are the bombs that explode when they land. They have a rather large hit area, so try to stay clear of them as much as you can. They deal damage to a 5x5 around them. Pick up the blessing. We take one each because we're going to be standing on different sides of Solak. My partner is on the other side, so he can continue to utilize his flank as much as he can. Then when Solak's waving animation there is done, I spawn my dome. I use my vitality potion again, just to get rid of some of the damage that I'm taking here. I'm running out to grab a res. And then I'm running back in. And I am cancelling my assault with disruption shield because I'm an idiot. So now I want to be stun immune, so I freedomed. Waiting for this, then I'm clicking that arm. Running up Solak. Get that green message. Wait a couple seconds and then resonance that fat melee hit when I come back down to get my HP back up. At this point I dropped my calorie bomb because we were nearing the damage cap and I just wanted to progress faster into phase 3. Normally there would have been another dome and another blight rain there, but because we hit the cap or passed below 1250, then that didn't happen. That was thanks to the calorie bomb. So now phase 3 begins. These are the relics I spoke of earlier. Periodically these are going to turn purple as they charge up to full. This is a 1 cycle elf kill though, so there won't be anyone going in on the first one. You can rest that like I did there. At this point, when Solak is shaking, you can soul split him back a decent chunk of HP, because there's a couple seconds before he does anything to you again. 2 auto attacks after this, he's gonna do the stun. So I stun him back. And just carry on DPSing. Then when Solak is nearing his damage cap, which is 300k, because this is a duo spawn, I'll be luring him over to a second pad on which we will charge that up and then go in and kill the elf. So at this point, I make sure to pass 2 full global cooldowns before I go attack the elf. That way I can barge, get a bleed on him. I use my CGS, bleed my flurry, and then kind of improvise. I tend to throw in a hurricane and a blood tendril. My duo partner Voke the elf, so I can soul split some of my life points back up and flank if necessary, but it wasn't at this point. And this is the beginning of phase 4. At this point you want to have 100% adrenaline. If you don't have 100 when you come out of the realm, it's fine, you can build a couple of abilities during this, but you want to step off so that your barge charges up. I use a disruption shield to kill one of the blight hits that's coming, and then we just do a full circ rotation. In this case I'm bleeding flurry, manually dealing assault, and then manually dealing destroy to get all 4 hits of all 3 abilities. And that was Solak done. So now for a trio kill. Strategies are slightly different. My 2 trio partners are a little bit more advanced and experienced than I am. They're also using hybrid DPS. They're not bringing just one style, so they're both melee and magic. Start doesn't really look different though. So that's pads. Some more damage, then the disruption shield resting for the bomb. And because this is a faster paced kill, I want to be wary about my berserk cooldown for the second berserk that I'm about to do. So I'm doing that well early. Back onto Solak, await the arrow indicator for roots, go over and plant my roots out of harm's way. Then I bled one of my flurries on Solak to get the berserk timer back. And at this point, because these 2 are hybriding, the arms and legs are going to pass by much faster, so adren management needs to be on pace here. Now we circ, 1 person barges the leg, and the core rotation. Core looks the same way as it did before. I bleed my assault, then I do my hurricane, a couple basics in between, a flank if I want to, and then a 4-hit flurry. This time we're doing erupts a little bit differently. Since I'm base tanking, I don't go up on any second one. I didn't in the previous kill either, but sometimes you do. It sort of depends on what rolls you decide to do. So I just kill this one. By the time I'm done with that, I'm running over here to progress the face. They kill theirs, and they go up to finish off the Blightstorm. In this case, as I mentioned before, because these two have magic gear with them, one of them is going to climb the arm. In this case, it was African Herb. So after this dome is done, I just carry on dealing damage. If you're wondering why it looks different than it did before. This time Elf is going to be 2-cycled. Since I'm base tanking, I won't go in on the Elf. Sometimes the base can go in and finish the Elf at the end. It doesn't really matter who does it at that point, but the initial cycle is up to the DPS. So when the first pad turns purple, you're going to see people disappear into the realm, and the pink meter of 275k is going to lower. So that's them gone. During the time they're in there, I just carry on dealing damage to Solak, and then I prepare to move him onto a second pad when he's about to reach his HP cap, and we finish off the elf and finish the kill. Now Solak caps at 400k. 2 people going back into the realm and finish the elf, and then we do the P4 burst. As you can see by the cooldown, I timed the use of my adrenaline potion so that I have 1 dose ready for this. This can be done with a sigil, but I tend to prefer to have the adrenaline pot. Just in case you need to throw in an extra threshold or a claw for good measure or something else fun at the end there. I'm also doing a hurricane rotation instead of the previous one. That's Solak dead. This is a bit of a faster pace kill with this 4 of us. Strategies look slightly different, P2 looks different. This is also an older kill, so there are some items that are missing. You'll notice the Amulet of Souls and the old Power Burst Vial rather than the Adrenaline Renewal Flasks. I also don't have a Power Burst of Vitality. There was one failed pad with the blight stack that I spoke of earlier, because me and Klux took the same one. This kill is also a root skip, so we're dealing differently with P1. We're not going to be running off to the roots after this bit. Here we go. Base tank is luring Solak over to the edge so that we can CGS him, and they can use AoE abilities to kill one of the roots while also dealing damage to Solak at the same time. So now we're going to cap Solak and then go for the roots. That was Solak capped. Notice the two mages or the two hybrids are doing the arms and legs because they have an extra ultimate to use. They don't have to rely on that being ready for the core. They can sunshine this part and then berserk the core. There's a lasher that was left over. So I'm going to bodge that instead of bodging the core and then just bleed my ability on the core as I normally would. In this case I used my limitless sigil because the adrenaline potion wasn't ready yet. That happens in faster pace P1s or root skips. Notice that the timer is just turning 2 minutes now, so now my potion becomes available. Same thing as before, everyone up on the first one, and then depending on how we divided the remaining eruptions. In this case, the two hybrids are going to kill one each of the northern ones, and me and Klux are going to go up on the second one here because we're both meleeing. Now for the DPS race. Slightly different rotation this time, but I don't want to go through that because this looks different depending on both team size and team strategy and how well orientated the team members are around damage in general, but also this boss. One thing to note is that for essentially every circ in most of the different strategies, I use either a full flurry or I bleed my flurry, and then I do the same thing in the next CGS so that I can circ earlier. Like in this case, I did 2 flurries on the previous circ CGS rotation so that I had my berserk up for going into that dome. Now, because we've capped Solak, there will be no slam. He's facing directly onto phase 3. Just as the previous kill, 2 people are inside the realm dealing with the elf. Me and the base tank are carrying on dealing damage to Solak. Now that everyone is back out again, it's just a DPS race until we can bring him as close as we can to the 500k mark before we do the second pad. 500k is the face cap HP for 4-man. So notice the two hybrids started their sunshines there. That means that me and Klux can go in since we're meleeing and finish the elf. In this case I did it alone, it seems. I didn't even remember that. But yeah. So this is 546k. This is slightly higher than the cap. My Ripper Demon also died, which is really inconvenience. But this is a pretty DPS confident team, so we kind of winged it anyway. In a sigil rotation, I bleed my assault. In this case, I did a flurry cancel, and then I screwed up my destroy because I sigiled too early. I still got it. And this is a showcase kill. This is not me. This is courtesy of our very own African Herb and his duo partner Lice and Tears in the recent duo personal record. These are all the different skips consecutively in a duo, which is pretty much the most difficult thing you can do. So this is mostly just an interesting display case for how extreme this boss can be. You'll notice they are changing aggros around to be able to utilize both people's flanks. And they're also doing the root skip. So they face Solak and then they go for the roots. Now for the arms and legs. In typical hybrid fashion, these face really quick since you can attack both of them at once with some abilities. You notice the detonate stacks there on the legs. And the core. Same thing really. Bleed one, cane, deal the other. By one and the other I mean flurry and assault. Which order you do it doesn't make a ton of difference. They're also doing the eruption skip here, so they are killing all the eruptions without going up once and dealing with a blight storm, which means that these purple things that are raining down from the sky are gonna carry on for the rest of the kill. This puts a lot more pressure on soul split flicking and food management. That was the calorie bomb. Calorie bomb is thrown any time during P2 really. That was nicely timed because both of them were low HP, so that Lice and Tears walked on top of the base tank Herb. Calorie bomb heals both players, so all players standing in the same area and Solak. The Solak heal is maxed at, I think it's 50,000. Notice that the rain is still carrying on. Here come the domes. So now there's a lower blight damage since there's two different sources of it. That would be the passage over to phase 3. Directly after the climb slam because of the calorie bomb and facing Solak's HP. As you can see, the Blight Storm is still alive up there and still raining down blight hits. And they're also obviously doing the 1 cycle elf rotation, so the first pad is fairly meaningless other than obviously given a nice soul split window there. Get some much wanted life points back up. Charging up the second pad. Dealing as much damage to Solak as you can before the time window of when you can enter the realm is up. And 350k, 50k above the 300k cap. Going in for the CGSs. Bleeding 1 ability. The Hurricane, Blood Tendrils, bleeds. Elf dead. And on to the final phase 4 push. Notice the shatter, the shards that were built up during some moments earlier. And that's Solak dead. So, yeah, I mean, this was kind of a lot of information, I think. I think I'm clocking in at around 53 minutes or something. Final words, none really. This is an extremely engaging and really fun social boss. It's also incredibly dynamic, as you probably understood from watching these different kills and seeing that stuff doesn't really look the same depending on how you choose to strategize it. Other than that, don't really know. Huge thanks to all the people that were in these different kills. That would be first one, my duo partner was full raid in clan. The trio was with African Herb and Wuhanian Bat. The 4-man was African Herb, Spyrix and Klux. And the final kill was just a duo between African Herb and Lies and Tears. Yeah. Probably the longest RuneScape guide I have ever made. Well, definitely the longest I've ever made. May well be one of the longest ever made in general. If you watched it all this way, thanks for the attention, I guess, and I hope you learned something and have fun at Solak.